Saturday afternoons were supposed to be calm. They were supposed to be about laundry humming in the background, the smell of coffee in the kitchen, and me sitting by the window with a book I barely read. My husband, David, usually spent them out with his friends or running errands, and I'd be left with the silence of our home. A silence that, lately, had started to feel less like peace and more like emptiness. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't unhappy in the traditional sense. David was a good man, reliable, kind, and steady. But steady has another side to it, predictable. After years of marriage, our relationship had slipped into a routine that felt more like coexisting than living. We were partners, yes, but the fire that once lit between us had dimmed into glowing embers, barely flickering. That Saturday started no differently. I was still in my robe, sipping coffee and scrolling through my phone, when a notification popped up that nearly made me drop the mug. Ethan. The name alone made my heart stutter. My ex-boyfriend. The one I swore I had buried deep in the past. The one I hadn't spoken to in almost 7 years. And yet there it was, a message from him. Hey, long time. I was just thinking about you. How are you? I read it 3 times, my breath catching in my throat. Ethan. The boy who used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt. The man who knew how to pull me into a world of excitement and recklessness. He had been my first real love, and also my first heartbreak. When things ended, they ended badly. Tears, fights, and words we couldn't take back. I had convinced myself that door was locked forever. So why now? Why today? I told myself not to answer. I told myself to delete the message and move on. But my fingers betrayed me. Before I knew it, I was typing back. I'm good. Surprised to hear from you. How are you? Within seconds, the typing bubble appeared. It was like no time had passed. I'm in town for the weekend. Thought maybe we could catch up. Just coffee. Nothing serious. Nothing serious. The words were harmless on the surface, but something inside me stirred. My chest tightened, my palms grew sweaty, and 1,000 old memories came rushing back. The late night drives. The kisses that felt like they could swallow the world. The fights, yes, but also the passion. God, the passion. I sat there, staring at the message. I should have said no. I should have told him that I was married, that my life was different now, that some things should stay in the past where they belong. But instead, I typed what would become the first of many mistakes. Sure. Where and when? 2 hours later, I found myself in front of a small cafe on the east side of town. I told David I was meeting a friend for lunch. It wasn't a total lie. I just didn't tell him which friend. The moment I saw Ethan walk through the door, time folded in on itself. He looked older. Sure, there were faint lines around his eyes. His jaw was a little sharper, but he was still Ethan. The same boyish smile. The same confident way of moving, like the room shifted around him instead of the other way around. And when his eyes landed on me, I swear I felt that same teenage rush, the one that made my stomach flutter and my knees weak. Wow, he said, pulling me into a hug that lingered a little too long. You look incredible. I laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. You don't look so bad yourself. We sat down, ordered coffee, and started talking. At first, it was small things, work, family, where life had taken us. I told him I worked in marketing now, that David and I had bought a house, that everything was good. I used that word so many times I started to hate the sound of it. He told me about his travels, his business, how he was still single. Never really found anyone who matched what we had, he said casually, sipping his drink. The words hit me like a stone in my chest. What we had, the way he said it made it sound alive, not dead like I had forced myself to believe. Hours slipped by. We laughed, we remembered, we fell back into old rhythms like nothing had changed. But something had changed me. I wasn't a carefree 20-year-old anymore. I was a wife. I was supposed to be committed to the life I had built. Yet sitting across from Ethan, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, alive. When the waitress came by with the bill, Ethan leaned forward. Listen, I know this might be too much, but would you want to keep talking somewhere more private? I'd love to just catch up, without all the noise. My heart pounded. I knew what he meant. Or maybe I only thought I knew. Either way, I should have said no. I should have smiled politely, said goodbye, and gone home to my husband. But the truth? I didn't want to. I wanted more. All right, I whispered, my voice betraying me. Back in the car, my hand shook against the steering wheel as I followed him to his hotel. Every red light felt like a warning, every turn an opportunity to turn back. But I didn't. I kept going. We parked, walked inside, and the moment the door closed behind us, the air shifted. It was heavier, charged, like a storm waiting to break. Ethan stood close, too close, and for a moment we just stared at each other. His hand brushed mine, and it was like no time had passed. The electricity, the danger, the pull, it was all still there. And though nothing happened that afternoon, at least, nothing physical, I knew I had already crossed a line. Meeting him, lying to David, stepping into that hotel room. My heart was racing, my body alive in ways I hadn't felt in years. When I finally drove home later that day, the guilt began to creep in. But so did something else, anticipation. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the last time. That Saturday afternoon was supposed to be calm. Instead, it became the beginning of something I couldn't control. And as I laid next to David that night, his arm draped across me like always, I knew a storm was coming. The morning after that Saturday, I woke up next to David with my mind still tangled in Ethan. His face, his laugh, the way his hand had brushed mine in that hotel room, it all replayed in my head like a loop I couldn't shut off. David, of course, was oblivious. He kissed me on the forehead before heading out for his usual Sunday golf game with his colleagues, leaving me in the quiet of the house. Normally, I would have curled up with a book or gone for a walk, but instead, I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for Ethan's name to light up the screen. It didn't take long. Did you sleep at all? I couldn't stop thinking about you. I should have ignored it. I should have thrown my phone across the room and drowned myself in house chores to forget the pull. But instead, my thumbs betrayed me again. Me too. That was all it took. His reply came instantly. Let's meet again. No excuses this time. My heart raced. My chest felt heavy with both guilt and hunger. I thought of David, steady, reliable David, and the promises I had made to him. But then I thought of Ethan and the way my body had come alive yesterday, as though he had flipped a switch I'd forgotten existed. By noon, I had already texted David that I was meeting a friend for lunch. And just like that, I found myself driving across town again, this time with far less hesitation. Ethan was waiting outside the same cafe, leaning against his car, his sunglasses catching the sunlight. He grinned when he saw me, that familiar grin that once had the power to undo me completely. You came, he said softly, almost like he hadn't expected me to. I shouldn't have, I whispered back. But the truth was, I wanted to be there more than anywhere else. This time, there was no pretense of coffee. We got in his car, and he drove straight to his hotel. My breath was shallow the entire way, my hands twisting in my lap. The guilt was there, looming, pressing down on me, but underneath it was a reckless thrill that made my skin buzz. The moment we entered his room, the atmosphere was different than yesterday. Yesterday had been tentative, testing the waters. Today, the air was heavy, charged, inevitable. We stood in silence for a moment. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the muffled sounds of traffic outside, and my own pounding heartbeat. Then Ethan stepped closer. His hand brushed mine again, this time lingering, and before I could overthink it, his lips were on mine. The kiss was everything I remembered and more, hungry, desperate, filled with years of unspoken longing. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, pulling him closer, melting into the heat of him. I told myself I would stop. I told myself this was wrong, that I couldn't let it go any further. But when his hand slid to my waist and his lips traced down my neck, all the reasons to stop dissolved into nothing. It wasn't just about desire, it was about feeling seen, wanted alive. David hadn't kissed me like that in years. He hadn't looked at me the way Ethan did, like I was the only thing in the room that mattered. Clothes fell to the floor, words blurred into breathless moans, and for the first time in a long time, I stopped thinking altogether. I let myself give in to the pull I had been fighting since the moment Ethan's name appeared on my phone. When it was over, I lay there in the tangled sheets, my body still humming, my mind a storm. Ethan was next to me, his arm draped across my stomach, his breath warm against my skin. God, I missed you, he murmured. I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me in waves. I had crossed the line now, completely. There was no going back to the version of me that was innocent, faithful, untangled. But even as shame gnawed at me, I couldn't deny the truth pulsing through me. I wanted more. The days that followed were a blur of lies and stolen moments. Ethan and I found reasons to meet. Afternoon coffees, late lunches, hours stolen in hotel rooms while David was at work. Each time, I promised myself it would be the last. Each time, I broke that promise. I told myself it wasn't serious, that it was just a fling, a temporary escape from the monotony of my life. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Ethan wasn't just a distraction, he was the reminder of who I used to be. The girl who laughed too loudly, who loved too recklessly, who lived without caution. With him, I wasn't the responsible wife, the dependable partner. I was me, raw, unfiltered, alive. But that freedom came at a cost. Every night, when I returned home to David, the guilt pressed heavier on my chest. I found myself avoiding his eyes, flinching at his touch, inventing excuses for my absences. He didn't suspect anything, at least not yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, David wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissing my shoulder softly. "You've seemed distant lately," he said, his voice full of concern. My heart clenched. "Just work stress," I lied quickly, stirring the pot as if the motion could hide the tremor in my voice. He squeezed me gently. "I'm here, you know. Whatever it is." I forced a smile and nodded, but inside I was screaming. Because the truth was, he wasn't there. Not in the way I needed. Not in the way Ethan was. The affair grew bolder with each passing week. What started as stolen afternoons turned into late-night calls, secret texts under the dinner table, moments where I would slip away just to hear Ethan's voice. And yet, with every kiss, every lie, every moment I gave to him, I knew I was building something dangerous. Something that couldn't stay hidden forever. But in those moments, wrapped in Ethan's arms, I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't just existing. I was living. The first time David questioned me directly, it felt like my chest caved in. It was a Thursday evening, just another ordinary dinner in our quiet home. I was setting the table when David's voice broke through the hum of the television in the living room. "Claire," he said, his tone careful, measured. "Can I ask you something?" My hands froze around the cutlery. I turned, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Of course." He studied me for a moment, his brow furrowed in that way it always did when he was piecing together a puzzle. "Where do you keep disappearing to lately?" "Lunches, errands. Sometimes you're gone for hours." The air in the room thickened instantly. My heart pounded against my ribs, so hard I thought he might hear it. "I told you," I said too quickly. "Work's been piling up. I've just been meeting clients, catching up on things." His gaze lingered on me, sharp and searching, and for a terrifying second I thought he knew. Really knew. But then, almost reluctantly, he nodded and let it drop. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. Because I realized something in that moment. I was running out of excuses. With Ethan, though, it was different. Every stolen hour with him felt like oxygen after suffocating. We became reckless, meeting more frequently, stretching the limits of my lies thinner and thinner. One Saturday, he pulled me into his arms the second I walked through the hotel door, his lips crushing mine before I could even speak. "I can't keep pretending we're casual," he murmured against my skin, his hands roaming like he was memorizing every inch of me. "I don't want you just in stolen afternoons, Claire. I want you." His words sent a shiver down my spine, equal parts intoxicating and terrifying. Because wasn't that what I wanted too? To be wanted like that? To be chosen? But then I thought of David, of the vows I had made, the home we had built, the life we had so carefully constructed. "I can't," I whispered, pulling back, though my body betrayed me, by leaning right into him again. "You know I can't." He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes searching mine with that familiar intensity that always undid me. "Then why are you here? Why keep coming back if you don't want me as much as I want you?" I opened my mouth to deny it, to push him away, but the truth spilled out before I could stop it. "Because with you I feel alive." The confession hung in the air between us, dangerous and undeniable. His lips crashed into mine again, and this time I didn't resist. The weeks blurred together after that. My phone buzzed constantly with Ethan's name, each message another secret I tucked away from David. I started guarding my phone like a lifeline, flipping it over during dinner, keeping it in my pocket when I used to leave it lying around freely. One night, as I was slipping into bed, David glanced at the glowing screen on my nightstand. Ethan's name lit up just as I snatched it away. "Who's that?" David asked casually, though there was an edge in his voice. I forced a laugh. "Just a client. She's been driving me crazy all week." He accepted the answer, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with the realization that the mask I had built was starting to crack. But the more dangerous it became, the more I craved it. Ethan had a way of making me feel like the center of the universe. He'd show up with flowers, kiss me like it was the last time every time, whisper things in my ear that made me forget who I was supposed to be. One afternoon, as we lay tangled in the sheets, he brushed my hair back and looked at me with a seriousness I wasn't ready for. "Leave him," he said. "Be with me. We've wasted too many years already." My stomach dropped. The idea had crossed my mind, of course it had, but hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. "I can't just walk away from my marriage like it means nothing," I whispered. "But does it mean anything to you anymore?" he pressed. His words stung because they cut too close to the truth. David and I had become a routine, a quiet existence that was safe but hollow. With Ethan, every touch, every glance, every breath felt like fire. I didn't answer him. Instead, I kissed him hard enough to silence the question, losing myself in the heat of the moment. But even as I did, the question lingered in the back of my mind, growing louder with every lie I told David. The guilt became its own shadow, following me everywhere. At dinner with David, I'd hear Ethan's voice in my head. When David kissed me goodnight, I'd taste Ethan instead. One Sunday, as David was telling me about his plans for the next quarter at work, I realized I hadn't heard a single word he'd said. My mind had been on Ethan the entire time. "Are you even listening to me, Claire?" David asked, frustration flickering in his eyes. "Yes," I lied, forcing a smile. But the truth was, I was drifting further and further from him with each passing day. Then came the moment that shattered the illusion of safety completely. I was leaving Ethan's hotel one afternoon, my hair still damp from his shower, my lips swollen from his kisses, when I spotted a familiar car pulling into the parking lot. David's car. Panic gripped me, so hard I couldn't breathe. My heart thundered as I ducked behind a pillar, praying he hadn't seen me. What was he doing here? Why this hotel? Had he followed me? I waited until he disappeared inside before I bolted for the back exit, my hands trembling, my mind racing with excuses I'd have to invent if he confronted me. That night, David said nothing about the hotel. He acted as though nothing was wrong, but I could see it in his eyes, the suspicion, the doubt, the cracks widening in the mask I wore so desperately. For the first time since the affair began, I realized just how close I was to losing everything. And yet, when my phone buzzed later that night with Ethan's name, I couldn't stop myself from answering. It was a Saturday unlike any other, though I wish now that it had been just another ordinary afternoon. I can still remember the way the light spilled through the living room windows, warm and golden, as if the world outside was calm and peaceful, while inside, my life was about to unravel into chaos. Daniel had left the house earlier that morning. He told me he had some errands to run, things about the car, grocery shopping, the usual Saturday list. I had nodded, kissed him goodbye, and watched him walk out the door. But instead of feeling the usual pang of guilt that had haunted me in recent weeks, I felt relief. Relief that I could see Matt. Relief that I could breathe again, in a way I never could around my husband. Matt was my past, my old flame, the ex I thought I'd buried under layers of time and vows. But there we were again, caught in this dangerous cycle of secrecy, desire, and nostalgia. He texted me just after Daniel left. "I miss you. I need to see you." By noon, he was already at my doorstep. I didn't even hesitate. My hands trembled as I opened the door, pulling him inside before the neighbors could notice. He smelled the same, like cedarwood in danger. His arms wrapped around me, and before I could think, before I could weigh the consequences, I melted into him. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Our silence spoke louder than any conversation could. His lips pressed against mine, hungry and demanding, and soon we were lost, tangled up on the couch where Daniel and I usually watched movies together. The irony stung, but in the heat of the moment, I didn't care. That's the part that hurts the most when I look back. How little I cared about the risk, the loyalty, the vows. The sound of keys jingling in the front door was the first warning. At first I froze. My body stiffened against Matt's, my breath caught in my throat. Daniel wasn't supposed to be home. Not yet. Not for hours. The door opened. "Claire!" Daniel's voice rang out, casual and unsuspecting. Panic spread through me like wildfire. I shoved at Matt's chest, scrambling off the couch. He looked just as shocked as I felt, his face pale, his hands fumbling for his shirt. But it was too late. Daniel stood there, grocery bags dangling from his arms, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Me half-dressed, Matt scrambling, the unmistakable air of betrayal thick in the room. For a moment, silence suffocated us all. I could hear my own heart pounding louder than any sound in the house. Then Daniel dropped the bags. The crash of cans rolling across the hardwood floor felt like the shattering of my marriage. "What the hell is this?" His voice was low, guttural, shaking with rage. I opened my mouth, but words refused to come out. My lips moved, but my throat betrayed me, choking on excuses that sounded hollow even in my own head. Matt stepped forward, his hands raised as though to shield me. "Daniel, listen. Don't you dare." Daniel's voice thundered, his eyes blazing. He wasn't looking at Matt, though. He was staring at me, his wife, the woman he trusted. "Claire," he said, his voice breaking on my name. "How could you?" My knees felt weak. I wanted to cry, to scream, to explain, but what explanation could I give? That I missed a part of myself I had lost years ago. That Matt reminded me of who I once was. That Daniel's love sometimes felt like duty instead of passion. None of it mattered. None of it would justify what I had done. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears burning down my cheeks. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. Sorry." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "You think sorry fixes this?" The room spun with anger and betrayal. Daniel's breathing was heavy, his fists clenched, his whole body trembling as though he was holding himself back from doing something violent. Matt, to his credit, or maybe his stupidity, didn't leave. He stood there, watching me, watching Daniel, his face caught between guilt and defiance. "Daniel, this wasn't." "Shut up!" Daniel roared, his voice echoing off the walls. "Get out of my house." Matt hesitated. His eyes flicked toward me, silently asking what I wanted him to do. But I couldn't even meet his gaze. My shame was too heavy. "Now!" Daniel shouted, his voice breaking. Matt finally grabbed his things and left, the slam of the door reverberating through the walls like a gunshot. And then it was just us, me and Daniel. Husband and wife. Betrayer and betrayed. The silence after Matt left was worse than the yelling. Daniel stood there, his chest rising and falling, his hands shaking. I could see the hurt in his eyes, deeper than any wound I had ever seen. And knowing that I had put it there, that I had been the one to break him, was unbearable. "Why, Claire?" His voice was hoarse now, softer but sharper in its pain. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" I swallowed hard, searching for an answer that didn't exist. "I don't know," I whispered. "I was lonely. I was weak. He made me feel something I thought I had lost." Daniel's jaw clenched. His eyes filled with unshed tears, but he refused to let them fall. "Something you lost." His voice cracked. "What about me, Claire? What about the years I've given you? The love, the life we built together? Was that not enough?" I broke then. I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into my hands, wishing I could turn back time, wishing I could erase every choice that led us here. But wishes don't undo betrayal. Daniel didn't touch me. He didn't comfort me. He just stood there, his silence louder than any accusation. Finally, he grabbed his keys, his voice flat and cold. "I can't look at you right now." And then he was gone. The sound of the door shutting behind him felt final, like a sentence passed down. That night, I sat alone in the same living room where it had all happened, surrounded by the ghost of what I had done. The smell of Matt's cologne still lingered. The image of Daniel's face when he caught us replayed in my mind like a cruel movie. I had destroyed everything. I don't know if Daniel will ever forgive me. I don't know if our marriage can survive, but I do know one thing. Secrets always find their way to the surface. No matter how carefully you think you're hiding them, the truth comes crashing in, just like it did for me on that Saturday afternoon. So, if you followed me through the story, if you felt the weight of my choices and the devastation of being caught, let me remind you, never underestimate the power of truth. And if you want more stories that cut this deep, stories that reveal the messy, complicated lives we live behind closed doors, don't forget to like and subscribe. These stories are raw, they are real, and they might just reflect something you've seen or done yourself. Because life, as I've learned, doesn't always play fair. Sometimes it burns everything you thought was safe, and you're left standing in the ashes, wondering how you'll ever rebuild. And that's where my story leaves me, broken, ashamed, but painfully honest.